Good morning. I'm Chuck Riley, Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in the College of Engineering and Computer Science, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this seminar this morning in our leadership series. Our speaker is Carol Craig. A self-described accidental entrepreneur and unconventional CEO, Carol Craig is founder and chief executive officer of Craig Technologies, headquartered in Melbourne, Florida. Ms. Craig grew the business from her kitchen table with one person in 1999 to over 285 employees and nearly $30 million in revenues today. She's a former naval flight officer with software engineering experience designing cockpit systems for Navy aircraft. She was named one of the top 25 women to watch, Florida's entrepreneurial leaders in 2011 by the Center for Leadership at Florida International University, and was the 2010 Minority Small Business Person of the Year award winner by the Small Business Administration South Florida District. Ms. Craig holds a BA in Computer Science from Knox College, a BS in Computer Science and Engineering from the University of Illinois, and an MS in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. She's pursuing a PhD in Industrial Engineering at UCF and a PhD in Human-Centered Design at the Florida Institute of Technology. Ms. Craig founded the Danny Craig Foundation, which aims to raise and administer funds to research children's medical disorders. She is active on numerous boards in the local community, including the Dean's Advisory Board for UCF's College of Engineering and Computer Science and the UCF Foundation Board of Directors. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Carol Craig.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I was kind of looking around the room and I see everyone here and I thought, wow, people are here they've read the bio and they're excited to hear me speak. And then I found out that this is a mandatory class and you guys have to be here or you fail. So, and actually that's probably a good thing because I understand that spring break is pretty much tomorrow, right? So you guys are ready to go. But it is great to be here, and I'm going to kind of share my story a little bit with you. I think I've got a room full of engineers, but the first thing I would like to find out is how many of you have that entrepreneurial bug and how many are interested in having your own business someday, because that'll kind of give me an idea. So, and I can actually see, despite these bright lights, I can actually see that. So we've got a few. Well, maybe by the time I'm done talking and speaking and telling you my story, you might change your mind. Those who aren't thinking about, well, not the other way. Depends on which way you might change your mind. But like I said, I'm self-described accidental entrepreneur, unconventional CEO. And what to take away from that is I really had never planned on any of this. I'm an engineer, computer science. I was going to go the typical route, and then somewhere along the way I made a change in plans, and here I am today running this company it's kind of creeping up on around 300 people. So again, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my company, a little bit about myself, and then maybe see if I can impart some words of wisdom on you that you might remember, at least maybe you'll remember them tomorrow, maybe not 20 years from now. So again, my name is Carol Craig. I am the founder and CEO of Craig Technologies. And Craig Technologies is an engineering and technical services firm, and I know you guys have probably all heard that, kind of, especially being here in the Research Park area in UCF. But what does that mean? Engineering and technical services for us means software engineering, systems engineering, IT support. We provide modeling and simulation, a variety of services to customers that include government and commercial. And government customers are NASA, Army, Navy, Joint Forces Command, Department of Defense, Department of Transportation, Homeland Security. I never met a customer I didn't like. I don't know how to say no because that's all about business. So we're very diverse. We've got a great customer base. We are in 20 different states. We've got about 35 contracts for a small business, and we're still considered small business, about 300 people. And we're in 30 different locations. So, nationwide. I think I can actually say we're nationwide. So that's the company in a nutshell, and then I think it's important to kind of describe myself so you get an idea of the man behind or the woman behind the curtain, and just kind of get an idea of how unconventional maybe I really am as a CEO. So as mentioned in my bio, I do have a Bachelor of Arts, Computer Science. That was my thing, computer engineering. And even though I have all these degrees, or it seems like it, and I'm pursuing 2 PhDs at the same time, I'm not an overachiever. I probably shouldn't say this on camera, but I can't stand school. I'm kind of your classic ADHD. I love to learn, but I do have a hard time kind of staying focused. And so I think ending up with my own business was the greatest thing I could have done because it lets me, it keeps my attention in all these different areas, and I can live vicariously through all of my employees and everybody out there. So I am an engineer by trade, but there's some other things about me as well. I have a music background. I was an athlete in college, so I've got a very competitive nature, which I think is important, as you look and you think about business, and it's probably one of the things that really helped me. And so I've got more of a broad focus. In addition, I was a naval flight officer, a P3, which is a patrol aircraft naval flight officer. So I'll give you a little kind of background on how I got to where I am as far as going through my track. I started as an engineer working for a couple different companies. When I was actually in college, I had been offered a ROTC scholarship, considered going into the military, changed my mind, and you'll see throughout as I speak, I change my mind a lot and do different paths. But changed my mind and decided to go ahead and move forward with getting a degree. And while I was going to Knox College, I found out about an engineering program called 3-2 Engineering, which meant I could get 2 degrees in 5 years, one of those being the Bachelor of Arts and one being an engineering degree. That was the best thing I could have done. I went to University of Illinois, and I was mentioning earlier today that I didn't have the greatest grades, but it really didn't matter because of the reputation of my school and the reputation of that engineering program. So I got the engineering degree and then went on to design cockpit systems for Naval Air Warfare Center in Indianapolis. And I was designing cockpit systems for F-18s, F-14s, a variety of aircraft. Well, while I was there, I was kind of doing that Charlie thing. And I know you guys are pretty young, so Top Gun, I know you've heard of Top Gun. I don't know how many times I've seen it a lot. But, Charlie in Top Gun was the woman who came in and would brief the pilots and, tell them how to use their systems and fly and things like that. That's kind of what I did. So as an engineer, I would be in there and have the guys in their flight suits all sitting around, and we'd tell them what the changes were to their aircraft, things that we were doing differently. And inevitably, they'd push back and say, "You can't do that." Like, what do you mean we can't do that? And I started to look and see that there was this disconnect between users and engineers. And as mentioned before, one of my degrees, the PhD degree that I'm pursuing, is human-centered design. Well, that's all about saying, hey, the human needs to be in there in the beginning. We shouldn't have this separation between our engineers and our users. So that kind of started getting me thinking about, okay, there's got to be a way to fix this. So as I was an engineer and working at the Naval Air Warfare Center, I tried to get a little more involved with the pilots and find out what their needs were. And pretty soon, though, I started thinking, boy, this is pretty cool. Those guys in their flight suits, you could wear pajamas to church, or to church, you could wear pajamas to work. And I thought, that looks really cool. I could do that. And so I started thinking, all right, I'm going to apply. I'm going to see if I can get in. And so I just, just for the heck of it, I pretty much applied to see if I could fly. And next thing I knew, I got accepted. It was kind of that moment of, uh-oh, this was not what I had planned on doing. So I had to make a decision. Am I really going to do this? Because I had a good engineering job. And I decided, why not? Everyone, instead of saying why, I say, why not? So I always say, why not? So I went ahead and I joined. At the time, what was kind of unique about it back then is women were not allowed to fly in combat. And I was going in to be a naval flight officer, which was a backseater. So I had no problem with that. Engineer, I can, do the numbers in the back and just ride along kind of like in a car. Well, once I got accepted and once I started flight school, they made a couple changes. And the first change was that women were now allowed to fly in combat. So now everything changed as far as what aircraft I was going to be in. The second change was that the backseaters now had to learn how to fly front seat, which was a problem for me because I was afraid to fly. So I know, and now you kind of go, oh, she's not so smart. Why did we ask her to come up here and speak? But one of the things that I did, one of the reasons that I went ahead and joined and wanted to go out and get involved was because I was afraid to fly, and I don't like being afraid of anything. So it was kind of those confront your fears, and I ended up going through and being successful up until a knee injury kind of ended my career with the Navy, and then all of a sudden, I had this change, and what am I going to do next? So that kind of led me along the path of learning about this user engineer disconnect. I kind of still had this in my mind, and once I got out of the Navy, I had met my husband, who was an F-18 pilot, and now I was following him around. It's one of the things Navy wives struggle with. We'll have degrees, we have careers, but we also have husbands and we have families, and we'll follow them around, and you get things change, and I show up at in a new city, and all of a sudden I have to find a new job. And it's very difficult. And so I just kind of started thinking, what are my options? What can I do? And I had a friend of mine say, hey, you know what? You ought to incorporate just for the heck of it, just in case. All you got to do, $250 on agents and incorporations online, something like that, and make up a name and just incorporate. And that's what I did. And sure enough, within like 6 months, my husband had been transferred again. I'm out of another job. And I decided, you know what? I incorporated. I had to see if this will actually work. And so I went ahead and had this company going and started looking for work. And honestly, within about a month after I started looking for work, I had some consulting jobs. So that's how I had gotten from this track of I want to be an engineer, design cockpits, to now I'm a consultant and have my own business. So it was an interesting track. It wasn't exactly what I had planned on doing. It was kind of one of those things that opportunities present themselves, and I took advantage of it. And hopefully you guys you'll see the same kind of thing. You have plans for your future. They could change, and you just kind of roll with that, especially in the economy today, taking advantage of some of those opportunities, even though there might be a little bit more risk involved. So one of the things that hopefully you'll see as I talk about being an accidental entrepreneur, unconventional CEO, is I pretty much do everything they tell you not to do when it comes to business and when it comes to, I guess, more that MBA mindset. So there's a couple different things that I did in the beginning when I started my company. One thing they'll say that you're supposed to not do, MBAs will say this, don't hire family and friends. Well, I did completely the opposite. I hired all family and friends. Actually, the good ones, because there are a couple. And I have had to fire, people ask me that, have you ever had to fire anyone? I said, yeah, I had to fire my sister, and I had to fire one of my cousins. So it does happen. But I hired family and friends because people are very important to me, and I knew these people. When you have your own company and you start off, there's a lot of risk. It's your house. It's, your future that's at risk, so you've got to find people that you really trust. And so, who did I trust more than anyone? My mother. And my mother was 70 years old when she started working for me. Still working for me today, and she's 81. And she's got a master's degree in math and education, and one of the smartest women I've ever met. So I started with that, having that family and friends supporting me. And the other thing that I looked at, and the other way that I kind of viewed life and people, was that, you may have this particular degree or you may have this experience here, but I bet you could do something different. You always look and see, how can I challenge somebody? And if you've got the right type of person, the right type of drive, it really doesn't matter what you do. So I took some of my friends who were Navy wives, who did not have jobs and wanted to work, and I said, hey, I'd like to teach you to do something different. And one of my real good friends had a master's in social work, and I taught her to write code. And so it became, it became cheap labor because she'd work for part-time, and she didn't need benefits and things like that. But it was also yet another loyal friend who could help me as I was trying to grow my company. And so I used part-time friends and family to try to grow this consulting business. And before I knew it, I was getting more and more work and needing to bring in more and more people. And I think at one point there was this, what I would call the Pinocchio moment, like, oh, I'm a real boy kind of thing. Like, oh, I'm a real company. I've got to take this serious now because there's a point of no return as you start to go down that path. And so I kind of stepped back, said, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it right. And in my mind, the best thing I could do was to put infrastructure in place first. And that's very risky. That means, cash outlay. That means, okay, I'm going to get everything. I'm going to do it all up front. And then I'm going to hope for the best. I'm going to hope that the work is going to come in. It's the field of dreams type of thing. Build it, they will come. And it did actually work for me. So I put the infrastructure in place. And what that meant was not only the people, it meant the technology. With the computer science background, even back then, I wasn't afraid of technology. And because I was still afraid to fly, I didn't want to travel. But I wanted to be nationwide. So how do I do that? Well, remote. That means I can have anybody working anywhere. We can use technology to our advantage, and I don't have to fly. And so I did that. I looked at put all of that infrastructure in place. And the other thing I did, because I've mentioned people are important to me, was that I put benefits and compensation in place early on. Had 10 employees, and I made sure that I had the absolute best compensation benefits plan that anybody could have. I modeled after large companies. I've always tried to think as a small company, have the large infrastructure, yet have the small responsiveness, because that's going to prepare you for the future. That's one of those things, always thinking ahead and planning for what the next step is. You'll never get kind of caught behind. So I put all that, all the compensation, the benefits in place. And one of the reasons that I did that, and it was so important, and I'll make this a very quick story, is because while I was trying to grow this business, married, ready to have kids, my firstborn had some difficulties when he was born. And I'll kind of give you the background, because you'll see it shaped really my mentality and how I felt about my company and people. So when my son was born, he had some issues. He was whisked off to the NICU. It was a Navy hospital, by the way, and I'm not saying anything against Navy medicine, but there were some issues there. And he was whisked off to the NICU, and they were trying to figure out what was going on. They couldn't figure it out. They started doing all kinds of tests, and when he was 4 days old, they had called us and said, we need you to come in. They'd taken a CAT scan and had some results. And I didn't want to come into the hospital. I said, just tell me over the phone. I want to know right now. And they said, well, a third of his brain is missing, and it didn't form when he was born. And so, looked pretty devastating for your first child. We went in, talked to the doctors, saw the pictures. It was definitely, looking at a CAT scan, part of his brain was missing. Well, fast forward, we're trying to figure out what are we going to do. This child's going to need, 24/7 round-the-clock care. We found a home for him, home for disabled infants. Right before we left the hospital and transferred him, I asked for an MRI. I said, I want more tests. I'm a control freak, and I was still trying to figure out, okay, what really happened, and how can I fix this, and what can I do? And we had an MRI done. I called the hospital where that was done, and I asked the doctor, so what are the results of the MRI? Says the same thing. It's exactly the same, sorry, whatever. So we checked my son into this home for disabled infants, and as we're sitting there the second day, we're sitting with the doctor, a nurse walks in, puts something in front of the doctor. He looks up and he says, we need to take the do not resuscitate, which we had put a do not resuscitate on my child. We need to take this do not resuscitate off this child right now. And I said, what are you talking about? Why? And he said, there's nothing wrong with his brain. And we just sat there like, what are you talking about? He said, the MRI shows there's nothing wrong with his brain. And I said, are you sure that's my son? And he said, yeah. And so at that point, everything changed. Now we needed to figure out really what was going on. And we did a bunch of tests, and it turns out he has a rare genetic disorder called Prader-Willi syndrome. Well, in my mind, like brain damage or Prader-Willi syndrome. I'm like, I could fix Prader-Willi syndrome. I don't know that I could have fixed brain damage. But what that did is that made me just completely reevaluate everything. What's important in life? What really means the most? And when you get upset about the little things, are they really that important? And so as I was growing this, all this was happening as I'm trying to grow a company and thinking about going off on my own. And so when I came down to thinking about the people who were going to be a part of my company and benefits and compensation and putting things in place, I realized, this is what's really important. And that's why I spent the most time on putting those, making sure that my employees were going to be taken care of, is because of, situations like that. So what's important about that is that, you have to kind of look out of the box, think differently. You can't do the same things that everybody else is doing. You got to remember really what's important. So out of that also came our core values, which is very important when you have a company. You've heard of mission statements and vision statements, and a lot of people do that. I think what's more important is your core values, because as you grow from a small company to a large company, you've got to have something that keeps you on the straight and narrow and keeps you remembering what's important. Our core values do that. Our core values are family, integrity, loyalty, passion, and then we've added community. And you can see that family was the first one. And it wasn't just because I hired my family, which I did, and it worked out quite well, but it's also because I think it's really important that you treat employees and people around you as if they're family. And that's what's going to take you, make you successful. So that's kind of the background, and I'm probably going to end up talking too long, but the background of the company and the things, what was so important to me as I grew. But there were some things that, as I look back now, there's some things that I think, what is it that made us successful? Because if you look at the economy, there are not a lot of companies these days that are thriving, and they're coming back, but especially in that downturn, they were not thriving. And so I've had to kind of look back and go, okay, what was it about my company that was successful and helped us thrive? And I think, a lot of it was the innovation, I call entrepreneurial innovation, of thinking out of the box, not doing what everybody else was doing. And innovation doesn't mean I'm going to invent the next best widget. It means I'm just going to do things a little bit differently. And it's, to me, it's all about gut. There's a phrase or a term I use, educated common sense. A lot of us think we have common sense, but we don't necessarily have common sense. But common sense is a good thing. Educated common sense is even better. And what that means is not necessarily the degree that you have, but it means everything that you've learned from the world around you and the people that you've surrounded yourself with. So that's really important. And I think as I've grown this company, I've used that educated common sense kind of a methodology, or always thought about it that way. And then also, one of the things I've done is I've always planned ahead. And I mentioned that before. Plan ahead, but accept risk. And I've done a couple crazy things, I think, in some people's eyes. I recently just hired the president and publisher of Florida Today from over in Brevard County. So a newspaper guy. And people would look at me and go, why did you just hire a newspaper guy to run companies when you're an engineering firm? Well, it turns out that he actually has a background in production. He has a background in operations, and I've actually started some new companies recently, and they're more production-based. It's not just the services. So for me, it made sense. But also, what was really important to me is if I was bringing in leadership, I needed somebody who had that same kind of attitude and mentality that I had, culture, caring about people. So I interviewed this guy for 5-6 months. And I was asking him a lot of personal questions, and how he treats people. And I went in and talked to the people that worked for him, and really saw that, this is a good marriage, because it becomes that. When you are at a level, executive level with someone, it's like a marriage. So you got to make sure that, you have those same attitudes and it's actually going to last, because there's a lot at stake. So I did that, and everybody in Brevard County, almost everybody, was sitting there thinking, why'd you do this? What were you thinking? Well, it's turned out to be quite successful because of his background and because of all the connections that he has as well. And so as we go forward, I think you're going to see, if you actually follow Craig Technologies, you'll see that we're going to be doing bigger and better things. And we've got several subsidiaries that we've created, taking advantage of the economy and opportunities. And again, one of those being the machine and tool division that I started, and taking advantage of the space in the commercial flight that's happening over there. So one of the other things that I did want to mention that I believe was one of the reasons that we were successful, and this is important, I think, to everyone here, is diversification. And for me, from a business perspective, we diversified from a geographic perspective, we diversified when it came to core capabilities, and we diversified from customers. But also, I diversified personally. So being an engineer, yet having a liberal arts background, being interested in more than just that one focus, helped me think more out of the box, be more innovative. And I think it also brought in a little more of the social skills, because I know we have a bad rep as engineers that we don't have any social skills. Well, I think that we can, that's not necessarily true. I think that we can definitely hold on to conversation. But I do think it's important, though, that we think differently and we get out there and we understand people, because that's how you can be successful as a leader. You want to find out, what are people's passions? What does somebody who's working for you or someone you're working with care about? That's how you succeed, is helping those individuals succeed. So I think that's very important. So a couple pieces of advice that I might give, and this applies whether you want to be an entrepreneur or whether you are leading someone in an engineering department, or no matter what you decide to do with your careers. It's really important that you remember it's all about tone at the top. And tone at the top means you as a leader, or just you as an individual, have an influence on those around you, under you, next to you. And it's really important that you think about that. You would never want your people to do something that you wouldn't do. And it's also, the tone comes in when you think about, it's even just tone. My son with special needs, I've realized that kids with special needs have very acute sensitivity to tone. And so I've learned that if I say something not quite right, he can, changes the whole meaning of what I've just said to my son. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with people. It's your tone. If you're trying to lead and you're trying to work with somebody and use the wrong tone, they're going to shut you out. They're not going to listen. So think of that. So it's tone at the top is very important. You also have to remember, I think, to treat people, like I said, like family, that everybody's important. Has anyone seen the movie The Help? I think there's the little, when the maid's telling the little, you is kind. I got to remember, you is kind, you is smart, you is important. You know, it's that's really important for us when we're dealing with other people, is to remember to treat them like family and that everybody is important. Because the bottom line is, no matter what you're doing, people are your brand. Whether you have a company, whether you're in a department, whether you're involved in a school, people are the brand. And it's important that people feel good. You want to, one thing I will say is you really ought to eulogize people today. You know, we hear a lot about, you know, somebody dies and you're up there and give a eulogy and how great they were. Well, that's wasted. And I think that it's important that anybody you work with, your employees, the people that you're surrounded by, you eulogize them today. Reward them, because that's going to make them want to do better. And it's important. People need to feel valued, because that's what it's all about. And we need to have some sort of passion. That's why the family, integrity, loyalty, passion, community, passion's very important. If we don't have passion about what we're doing, there's absolutely no reason to be doing it. So I believe that's extremely important. A couple other comments I did want to make. There's a couple books. One thing that I do, I continue to read, always reading, always trying to learn, even though the conventional way is not necessarily my thing. But there's a couple books I would love to recommend for you guys. One is called Creating Magic, and it's about the Disney story. And the other is called The Noticer. And one of the things with Disney, they talk about leadership. They talk about treating people, because the people are their brand. Disney says, manage like a mother, which I know for a room full of guys, you're like, what? No, not a chance. But what that really is it becomes, caring about people. One of the best ways that I've been able to lead is I've led by lack of disappointment. I don't know if that makes sense, but my people are so afraid to disappoint me. Not in a bad way, but it's a good way. It's not, I don't yell, I don't get upset. They just don't want to disappoint me because I expect so much out of them. And that's kind of that manage like a mother. I have an executive team who has often been referred to as my island of misfit toys. And again, you guys are young and probably haven't seen that, the Christmas story, but my island of misfit toys is because I did not traditionally pick the types of people that a government contractor would select to work for me. I chose individuals based on character, based on what I thought they could do, and how I thought I might be able to lead them. So I think that's that manage like a mother, because a mother gets what they got, right? The kids are what they are, and it's up to a mother or family to shape that individual. Well, I look at employees that same way. So just a couple last things, and then I'll open up to if anyone has questions. But I have a couple of these sayings, and I get made fun of sometimes for my sayings. But and I'll run through these. My first one is no regrets. That is one thing that when I'm done with all of this, I don't want to look back and have regrets. That doesn't mean I can't change my mind. That doesn't mean I can't say I'm going to do one thing today and tomorrow I'm going to do another thing. That just means that when I'm making those decisions, I want to make sure that I'm using my head, using my heart, and I'm not going to look back and think, why did I do something in that particular manner? And that ties a little bit to that, what I would call the myth of work-life balance. I've got 2 children, one with a disability, and I'm working on all these degrees. I'm running a company. I don't want to look back and think, wow, I didn't spend enough time with my family. I didn't do these things. I didn't take that vacation I should have. Little things like that. I want to make sure that I don't have any regrets when I'm done at the end of the day. I also really believe in no apologies for who you are. And this is a little bit ties to women. I've mentioned before, with women, believe it or not, some of the qualities, the best qualities that make us the best CEO are the ones that we're apologizing for all the time. And I think even, men are like that as well. There should be no apologies for who you are. Be who you are, take advantage of your strengths, and use those to your advantage. Don't try to be something that you're not and, fit in that form, that MBA type of form. And I apologize if I'm insulting anyone with MBAs. But a couple others. Semper Gumby. Any Marines out here? Any Marine wannabes? So Semper Gumby just means be flexible. It's okay to go one route and then change and move to another. That's what it's all about. And especially in the economy and the way things are today, it's important that we change. Because I think there's a lot of companies out there that aren't in business anymore or people without jobs because they couldn't change. We see that struggling over in Brevard County with the space program. People who work for NASA are so used to doing something this same way that when that went away, they can't adapt. So it's important to be flexible and think semper gumby. Did anybody die? Is another one that I will say, and obviously based on what happened with my son, but I'm always talking my employees off the ledge. They're getting worked up about something, pretty minor, and they'll come to me and I'll say, you know what, bottom line, did anybody die? As long as we make payroll, did anybody die? And they say, nope, nobody died. That's what's important. You got to stay focused, even in school. It's making sure you really know what your priorities are and what's important, but at the same time, is it worth really getting upset about? And I think one of the last things that I would say that I really believe, whether it's when it comes to business or it comes to your careers or life in general, is if you take ego and greed out of the equation, there's no reason you can't succeed. And that's hard. With the ego side of it, as I've grown this company, it's hard for me not to start to order people around and feel like everybody's there to bring me coffee or, get that off the printer because I don't want to get out of my seat and go get something off the printer. So it becomes, the ego thing sometimes it's a little bit hard to manage. But really what that means is I think there's a difference between self-confidence and self-esteem and ego. And the ego is at the expense of other people. So take that out of the equation, and then greed. I sat on a panel and we were talking at the Space Coast Energy Consortium, and somebody was talking about the bottom line. The bottom line for business, it's money, the bottom line. And I had said something to the effect of, well, if that's what's important to you, then you lead a pretty empty life, which did not make him very happy. And so I no longer have a friend there. But But the greed part, I think you have to focus on the mission. Why are you doing this? What's the reason for all the pain and suffering? Whether it's company or it's school, what's your real reason behind why you're doing it? And in my business, it's the mission. It's NASA, it's soldiers. It's that supporting those kinds of missions is what makes us do what we want to do. And so that's why you take that greed out of the equation, you take that ego out of the equation, and there's no reason you can't succeed.
There are some questions for Ms. Craig.
Or you're just all ready to go to spring break. Yes, sir.
How did you finance your business?
Oh, that's a good question. You knew that was on one of my cards too, didn't you? Okay, so I'll just give you a little. That is one of the biggest challenges. I think if people come and ask me, what keeps you up at night even today, it's finances. So when I started my company, I had to decide, do I want to go the investor route? Do I want to do it organically? And I decided in the early days I wanted to do this on my own because having that somebody else's money on my shoulders was just too much for me to deal with. So I financed my company. I had 8 credit cards in the beginning, maxed out. I had 2 mortgages on my house. I had SBA loans. And SBA loans, if you go that route, you pretty much have to give up your firstborn on something like that because it's unbelievable. They want life insurance. They want all your stocks, anything you might possibly own, you have to use that as collateral. So I went that route. And then I had to use something called factoring. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with what factoring is. Factoring is legalized loan sharking, pretty much. And I've said that before, and there have been bankers or factoring companies sitting in the audience. They get really mad. But what that is you can actually sell back your invoices and get money for them before you get paid by customers, but you pay a very high price. And it's considered interest and or a fee on that kind of thing. So it's not the most optimum way of doing things, but it's kind of a necessary evil. Because banks, unfortunately, this is the banker thing, banks only lend money. I think Ben Franklin said something along those lines of, the bankers only lend money to those who have money. And that is one of the problems that you run into when you're starting a business, is they want to know, show me you're successful. Well, I'm not successful because I don't have any money. If I had money, I could be successful. So it's this catch-22. So that's what I had to do. I had to do the factoring. But what I did with all of that is I was always kind of staying one step ahead. So I had the factoring in place. I'd already met with the company, talked about it, before I actually had the need. And then while I was doing the factoring, I had gone to different banks and was working with each one to find someone who would support me. And I finally found a bank in Brevard County who really trusted me at the time because I was growing. I had 10 people. I'd been a successful consultant, but I had been losing money for about 2 years straight up to that point as I was trying to grow my company and put the infrastructure in place. But this particular individual, looked at my business plan, listened to me. I had to be the one selling this on him. And he said, okay, I'm going to trust you and we're going to support you. And they're still my bank today. One of the things, though, I have learned is you can't stay with the same bank or the same people. They get complacent, and you never know if you're getting the best deal. So I'm looking right now to move over to some to different banks and kind of exploring my options. But it's still an issue for me. Even at $30 million, it's kind of like, what do I do? Do I want to stick with banks? Do I want to get investors so I can grow some of these other companies? A couple other companies that I've started are a software company, and then we're going to have a clay shooting range over in Brevard County, believe it or not, because there's an opportunity for that as well. So I have to decide. I know, very cool. I get some head nods over there. So I have to decide, do I want to get investors for that? Or do I want to just do that organically? And if I do it organically, it's probably going to be a little bit slower. So always the financing is an issue. It's not really getting any better. Again, there's no bankers here in the audience, so I don't have to worry about that. But so you have to think out of the box. You have to be innovative and come up with creative solutions to be able to fund some of those opportunities, ideas that you have. Yes, ma'am. Leadership advice. Hire people smarter than you. Definitely. That's really important. I kind of say that, with a smile, but it's really true. As a leader, get the ego out of the way. You want to be surrounded by people who are smarter than you. You want people with the same work ethic as you, but, the leadership. I've read some things where they say a leader should have about 9 direct reports. But the fact is, you can have more than 9. You could have 40 direct reports if they're good direct reports, because then it just becomes oversight. Situational awareness is another leadership advice I would give you. Situational awareness is a term that aviators use a lot, and just exactly what it means. Aware of the situation. It's really important when you're flying. You're scanning. You're knowing what the weather is. You're looking at instruments. Everything going on. I believe the same thing when it comes to business. Situational awareness versus micromanagement. Situational awareness is not micromanaging. It's understanding what's going on with your people, with your customers, finances. That's the biggest thing. I'm also the CFO because I think, it's my house, it's mortgaged, but at the same time, I think that the money is very important. And I've looked at a lot of companies, and that's where they have a lot of issues, is when they've lost track of, what's happening in their finance department. So it's this situational awareness. And the other thing about situational awareness is that, as a leader or as that CEO or, whatever, you are the one that can probably connect the dots better than anybody else, because you're looking at everything that's going on while your other teams are focusing on those individual areas. And you can probably save some money, efficiencies, help people out by saying, you're doing this over here. Someone over here on this side can benefit from that. And let's, and like I said, connect those dots and put them together. So the situational awareness, I think, is very important. Any other questions?
There's a question.
Oh, yes.
You said back when you were designing cockpits as an engineer that the users or the flyers, they were saying, no, you can't do that. So you changed your position. Did you spread that knowledge with other engineers so that that problem ended?
Not so much. And the reason is because back then it still wasn't very that human-centric. You didn't have participatory design. I don't know if you're familiar with some of those terms where, more like a group working together. It was an individual engineer working on this one project. And I was young then too. So I was a 26-year-old, and they weren't really listening to me too much. But I think that mentality has changed. And I probably should have been a little more aggressive at that time and, talked and said, hey, this isn't working. But to give an example of what wasn't working, we would design something called a CDNU, which is your Control Display Navigational Unit. And we would design, you have to press 3 different buttons to get to a particular page. And that's when the pilots would say, wait, I'm in an OV-10 and I'm, jostling around, and there's no way I can quickly do that. And so I think that did come back at least to the team, but we never really talked about, okay, now when we go forward, how are we going to do this differently? So had the same issues, going forward. Hopefully that's different, though, these days. Yes?
As an entrepreneur, could you share some mistakes you made in the beginning that you think that you could possibly avoid in the future?
Everyone asks that. It's a very great question. Yes, I made some bad decisions in the beginning when it came to money, because as a consultant, I was doing very well. And I think maybe my ego got in the way there, but I would have some people come to me and say, hey, I've got a great business idea. Would you like to fund it, kind of a thing, And for me, I'd never had money. I hadn't been successful. I was kind of, yeah, I can do that. And I lost a lot of money doing it that way. But I will say that that's made me a better business person today, because now I have a lot of people come to me and talk about partnering and things like that. So, those mistakes were bad, but they were good. I mean, you want to make those mistakes. I look back and think, thank goodness I did that. That's one of them. I made some hiring decisions, some poor hiring decisions, and one of my weaknesses is that I don't like to fire people. So I have a gentleman who works for me. He calls himself my old white guy. He's like a grandpa, and he says his whole job is to fire people for me, because he knows I can't do it. Because it breaks my heart to have to let somebody go and know they have families and that kind of a thing. So I've made some mistakes where I may have hired the wrong person, but it took me too long to let them go. And that was a disservice to them as much as it was to my company. So, and hopefully I'm learning from those mistakes. I'm still making lots of mistakes today, but hopefully I learn from them, and, it makes it a better company down the road.
Question right here.
Oh, yes, sir.
As you were building your company, how important were sales skills to you in building that company? Do you have any advice for us as engineers who technically aren't the greatest at sales skills and developing those sales skills if we want to pursue building our own company?
Right. I call it business development. There's business development, then you'll hear people refer to sales. And to me, business development becomes more about relationships. So you're right, I mean, it is important as an engineer, or the social side of things is important. One thing that I think helped make us very successful is that I was selling products and services that I understood. So I was very confident. And I truly believe in that. I think going to a customer and telling them about their, how you can help their needs, if you truly understand it, goes a long way with that customer. And I actually tried to back off for a few years and say, I'll have my other guys go out and try to sell to customers, and it didn't work. And so even today, I'm the one that they want in there. And again, I think it's because of my knowledge and understanding of what I'm selling to them. So I think the confidence when you're going in, staying focused on if you're going to start your own business, that you really understand the product, and just understanding that it's a relationship. Being yourself kind of fits into that. I was always intimidated in the early days in the government contracting world. It is a lot of older gentlemen. No offense to you guys sitting right there, but and so that can be intimidating. But I learned early on that actually these are people with families, grandfathers, and so it's all about relationships. And once you start to relax and that, it becomes a lot easier to make those sales and do the business development.
Could you tell us a little bit about who you consider to be your role models and your mentors?
Sure. That's actually a very good question. I've had several people come up to me and say, why don't you have an advisory board? Why don't you have a board of directors? And I've been very blessed to have an unofficial board of directors as I've been going through this journey. And so I would say for sure, and this sounds a little cliche, my mother is absolutely my role model and my mentor, only because when you think about women and her age, 81 years old, and got a master's degree in math and education, that's pretty unheard of, really. And she's always, been very well grounded and has worked for me. So it kind of showed me that people can, if you expect things out of people, they can pretty much do anything. But in addition, I've always looked at other companies. I've looked to other CEOs. I've had mentors that have been small company, CEOs for small companies. There's admirals that I've gone and talked to. But a lot of it has just been that educated common sense, that just taking a little bit from every single person that I've met and applying it to myself. So that's kind of the way I look at the mentors and the role models.
Another question.
Yes.
I'd like to know, how did you develop your self-confidence? Like, I know a lot of us have some problems with self-confidence.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm actually extremely insecure, and I know it may not seem like that, but I really was. You know, growing up, I was very insecure. I look back at pictures. I was going to put a picture up here, and it's embarrassing. I think, why did my parents do that to me? You know, big glasses, the pants that are too short, kind of a thing. So I think my self-confidence really was later in life. When I joined the Navy, that was one of the things to realize that I could do something I'd never done before. You know, stepping outside that box and trying something that you're afraid of changes everything. And I'm still insecure, but I'm confident in my abilities at this point. So, and you know, I ran track in college. I got a little more involved in sports. You know, when I started to do well and started to see that I could succeed. You know, I'm a female engineer. Was a female aviator, female CEO. You know, kind of said, okay, if I can do anything that they can do, anything a guy can do, I can do. So I almost sought out those kind of opportunities that would force me to get out of my comfort zone. And because of that, honestly, that has improved my self-confidence greatly. It's a very good question, too.
Other questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.